welcome to the latest episode of the Making Lean Fly podcast. I'm your host, Philip Holt, and the podcast subject this time is the Kaikaku experience, learning from the best to become the best. And I've got some great guests who will introduce themselves very, very shortly. We have Rob Etheridge, Gary Shurmer, John Tudor, our external guest, who will tell you a lot more about himself very soon, and Anthony Howarth, who's a regular on the show. And the abstract for this podcast episode is that the Kaikaku experience is an opportunity to visit companies who are excelling at their lean transformation, to learn from them and gain inspiration for your own journey. However, it's not traditional benchmarking, nor is it industrial tourism. And it's important that the experience is properly curated to provide the maximum value. In this podcast, the guests talk about what makes a Kaikaku experience successful and how the listener can experience it themselves. So with that said, let's get into the introductions. So I think we'll start with you, John. So John Tudor, as I said, is our external guest, but over to you, John. Tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, Philip, first of all, thanks for inviting me to the podcast. Really appreciate it. So my background is around lean and training. So at the moment, I'm the founder of True North Excellence, which is a lean best practice event and training consultancy. So as I said, I've been involved in lean for 20 years, originally Manufacturing Shingo Prize, Manufacturing Magazine, editor of Lean Management Journal. And for almost all that time, my role has been to support and help companies on their journey to continuous improvement. The biggest takeaway I've had in those 20 years is it's all about behaviours and leadership behaviours and the systems to support it. So all tools that we do, including Kaikaku, are great, but it's all about behaviours. But we'll come into that when we actually talk about Kaikaku.
Thanks, John. That's easy for you to say.
I don't
Brilliant. Thanks very much. It's great to have you on the call, John. And Gary, welcome.
Yes, no, thank you, and thank you again for inviting me. I do enjoy doing these. I think this is my third one now. So those that have not met me or have not know a little bit about me, so I've been in lean manufacturing for the best part of 25, 26 years. Worked in automotive, rail, and aerospace. So aerospace for the last 10. Been with GKN for coming up to 10 months now. Started as a lead expert, but I'm just transitioning to Anthony's team as a lead master. Really looking forward to sharing my experience and knowledge on the Kaikaku experiences.
Great, thanks, Gary. And Rob, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Philip, for inviting me back. So my name's Rob Etheridge. I'm currently a lean expert in the defence business line in GKN. Been with GKN for about 4 years now, since the start of the lean operating model journey in GKN. I've been in aerospace pretty much my whole life. My background is predominantly Honeywell Aerospace, which that was where I did a lot of my learning from being an apprentice, going through all of the operational roles, being an engineer, being a team leader, being a group leader, being an ops manager for a short period of time. So having that experience of the shop floor and how a lean operating model and how tools are rolled out and you use them versus how I now try to roll them out and try to inspire people to use them. It was a wealth of knowledge that really has helped me try and coach and influence people using lean as a way of creating world-class performance.
Great, thanks, Rob, and as always, it's great to have you on. And then last but not least, Anthony doesn't need too much of an introduction, I think, to our listeners by now, but over to you.
Yeah, so thanks for having me again, Philip. I won't bore you with my career history, but I guess what I will say is that linked to the topic, I've probably been on 7, possibly 8 different Kaikaku experiences in different parts of the world, visiting different companies in different industries. So I look forward to being able to contribute in the best way that I can to this podcast.
Yeah, excellent. And I think that segues us very nicely into the subject, because it's a privilege, I would say, but also an imperative for anybody who's trying to lead a lean transformation to really understand the art of the possible. And I think the best way that we can do that is by going out and seeing other companies, other people who are doing it, so that we can understand what is actually achievable. So I guess, you know, that puts us on to our first question, which is what is a Kaikaku experience? And yeah, Anthony, maybe you want to start us on that.
Yeah, so a Kaikaku experience really is it's a huge learning opportunity. It's an opportunity that's there to really try and inspire and stretch the imagination of a team that's about to undergo a significant lean transformation. You know, so for me, it's really about learning about, you know, what does world class look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What's fundamentally different in these companies that are renowned as being world class? So it's really about getting a feel for that and being able to make a comparison between, you know, where we're currently at, or where the company is that's about to embark on the transformation, where they are, and what the gap is to world class. And not just really about understanding what the target is, but learning a little bit about how the company actually got there, the roadmap, the pitfalls, the critical success factors.
Brilliant. That's really good description, I think, there, Anthony. And you know, I guess really, John, you know, you organise visits for people. You know, I guess you've done this all across the world, but you know, you predominantly look at companies in Europe. And you know, what would you say is the benefit of a Kaikaku experience for the people who go on it?
Okay, so I take a slightly different view from the leader's point of view of what Kaikaku is about, because you won't do anything unless you actually want an end. And so leaders are salespeople, and they need to sell to the organization what the future will look like. Okay, because it's about what will the future look like, which is why you're not world class at the moment, but you want to be world class. So you need to set what the vision looks like. And one way of doing it, because there's other ways of doing it, is taking the people that you need to sell this idea to a world-class organization to see how they act, how they behave. So there's a technical side about inspiring people, education, that type of thing. But from a leader's point of view on a journey, it's helping the sales process of selling in what you're trying to achieve at the end of it. So there's different ways of looking at Kaikaku, and that's just one way of looking at it.
Yeah, excellent. So I think we saw kind of two perspectives there. One from people who have already kind of bought into the fact that they need to be able to change, but need to see what the art of the possible is. And then, as you say, John, there's also the element of taking people who are really not convinced that they need to make a change, or that they can make a change, and showing them, you know, what the future could look like. And I guess those are kind of two sides of the same coin, but an important differentiation. So yeah, thanks for that, Anthony and John. I think you've given us a good view of what a Kaikaku experience is, and maybe some of our listeners are wondering, you know, why we're using the term Kaikaku. Many people will be familiar with the word Kaizen, which is roughly translated as, you know, change for good. Kai, change, Zen, good. Kaikaku is really about radical change. So again, Kai for change, but Kaikaku part of it means around radical change. And you know, these are two important elements of continuous improvement. People sometimes talk about continuous improvement as being only Kaizen, gradual improvement. Actually, continuous improvement is, as the name suggests, about continuous improvement, and that can be both Kaizen and Kaikaku improvement. And the Kaikaku experience is going to experience, as the name suggests, what a radical change could look like for your organization. So we deliberately use that Japanese term just to differentiate it from the intent of a traditional benchmarking type of activity. So it's really going to see how you could be significantly different by seeing some people who've done that really well. So I'm interested, Rob. You've been on at least one, maybe you've been on more than one. And you know, why would you advise to somebody that they need to go on one? What did it do for you?
Yeah, and this is just to tag on to, you know, what John and Anthony have sort of said. You know, a Kaikaku experience is, it's like a shot of caffeine, or it's like a NOS going into a car, right? You know, giving that boost. This is about winning the hearts and minds. This is about trying to find an emotional connection. And John mentioned about having, you know, getting people that potentially they have a vision, that, you know, maybe the site director or maybe a leader has got some experience or knowledge from another business, and he's come in and trying to influence the team. This is where we need to go. This is where I want to take you. And there's a bit of hesitance of, you know, we've been working like this for 25 years. You know, why should we change? Why should we radically change, like you're saying? By going on an experience like this, it provides that inspiration. It creates the spark within someone that creates the light bulb moments and go, I can see now. Now there are some challenges, and we'll get onto that later in the show of, you know, how and what you need to do to make sure that they're successful. But, you know, to go on one, why we need to go on one is to inspire people, inspire the team to create this movement that will propel your journey to a vision that you want to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary, kind of similar question to yourself. What do you see the reasons for going on the Kaikaku experience as being?
Yeah, so I think the main reasons for me is businesses mainly deal with solving problems, and by focusing wholly on solving problems, they're not looking at really creating opportunities. And by going to other businesses to see how they deal with not only solving problems but also creating opportunities for the future, it really does, as Rob says, it kind of gets the buy-in. You know, it's you know, what we have to remember is, you know, we all focus and benchmark ourselves against, you know, or we want to focus and benchmark ourselves against, you know, the world-class companies. And if we look at Toyota as an example, being, you know, up there in the, you know, top one or even top three, is they started by Kaikaku experience in Ford. You know, they learned from Ford and evolved it. And really what we want to do is, we don't want to copy what other companies do. What we want to do is, I suppose the old saying is, we want to steal with pride the best practices that really work for them, that we believe we can bring into our organisation. You know, and not everything fits for, and not everything will fit for GKN, but there is a lot of things that really will fit. And we have to understand, how do they work? How have they been embedded in a different organisation and in a different business? And how can we then put that into our company? So for me, it's about, okay, we still have to deal with the day to day, but how do we step out of that circle? How do we get off the hamster wheel and go, okay, well, how do we move forward? Sometimes we can't see the wood for the trees. Well, actually, by doing a Kaikaku experience in a different organisation, you can actually stop focusing on your problems and actually start seeing what they're currently doing, and actually think, yeah, these are really good practices we could do. Not quite think we could do that one, but yeah. So for me, it's about, how do we create the opportunities and stop focusing on just solving problems every day.
Yeah, brilliant, Gary. I think that was really insightful as well. I mean, the way you talked about, you know, Toyota might be seen by many or some as the, you know, the pinnacle of lean leadership and lean thinking. But as you say, they started their journey off by understanding what other automotive companies were doing, like Ford. And then the other element, which is essentially what they did, was take the goodness, ignore the bits that you don't think are good or you don't think are relevant to you, but take the goodness and extract that and make it yours. And I think that's really, really important. Absolutely. So John, you know, when you help to organise, and you don't call your experiences Kaikaku experiences, you know, you talk them, I don't know, is it benchmarking experience or whatever you use the term. You know, what is it that's critical to that to make sure that visit is a success for the people who are participating?
Yeah, so first of all, about using lean language. I use the language of my customers. So GKN, very much into Japanese, using Japanese language and lean language. And so I'm absolutely fine, because I've ran probably 3 or 4 Kaikaku visits for GKN Aerospace in the past. So I use the language that the customer uses. what's critical, you need to apply lean thinking. You need to plan, do, check, and act. And the planning stage is probably the most important part of doing a Kaikaku. What do you want at the end of it? Say, for example, the other thing is a Kaikaku experience can be 1 day, it can be 2 weeks, but it needs to have 2 components, which is look, go, see, what did we learn, what can we do next? Critical is having an action plan at the end of it, because what will happen is a lot of people will see the world with a different set of lenses from going and seeing a world-class company. You'll get 20-30% of guys or girls going really inspired, but it's the next steps, it's the acts, it's like, what do we do, what we're going to do as part of our transformation plan. So critical is to understand the planning is as important as the actual doing. And then following a cycle at the end of it to create a steering group. How do we meet? What's the cadence of meeting to make sure that the great ideas that we've had, the great ideas that have been facilitated during this time that you've had there, actually delivers into a change as well. So it's great being inspired, but it's the follow through and the discipline at the end of it that to me is a critical factor.
Oh, absolutely. So you've touched on a few really good points there, John. So Anthony, you've curated, in fact, you created kind of our brochure and our approach to a Kaikaku experience, both in a previous company and in GKN Aerospace. So, you know, how taking those points that John's just made, how do you take a group through that process?
Well, I guess I'll answer that question and touching on something that John said as well. So one of the most important things for me is it's about the careful selection of the companies that you're going to go visit, really making sure that they are going to be able to offer that experience that you're looking for, you know, whatever that may be. And you know, I've personally learned the hard way. You know, I've taken groups to companies that unfortunately haven't been able to provide that eye-opening experience that we were looking for. So yeah, learning through mistakes. It's really about the careful selection and prioritization. You know, doing a pre-visit, going and having a look at, is this company a truly world-class company? You know, and perhaps if it isn't, are there sort of pockets of excellence that would be really beneficial for the sites to actually see? So that for me would be one thing. The other thing is the structure. So typically what we've done is we've spent you know, between 4 and 5 hours actually on site at the Kaikaku Experience host company in the morning, and usually spent the afternoon either in a conference room or in a hotel close by the host company doing a thorough debrief. So, you know, John mentioned, you know, what did we learn? You know, really going into detail about, you know, what did we see? How were the leaders acting? You know, what's different? You know, what are the key learnings that we can take back? And I guess connected with that, the structure around setting expectations in terms of what are we actually looking for and looking at. So typically we divide the group into 4 groups. At GKN Aerospace, we've focused that around the people, the human, the leadership type elements. So we have one group that are specifically looking at that. We have another group that are looking at the things that I would consider to be the foundational elements. You know, the general condition of the factory, the 5S, the visual management, the TPM, the standard work, leader standard work, things like that. Another group looking specifically at built-in quality. You know, so what do the companies do to design quality into the product so it doesn't have to be inspected? And then the 4th group looking at the just-in-time elements, so the tact, flow, pull, the way that they organise the value streams, the way that they schedule the deliveries and do their internal logistics. If you don't set some kind of structure and give people an idea of what it is that they should be looking for, they'll try and look at everything and capture all of the small things, and you probably won't be as successful in capturing at the end what did we really you know, take from this experience. And you know, as John quite rightly said, all of that, the pre-visits, the structure, all of that kind of fits into the plan of PDCA. So I do agree, John, that that's where most of the effort needs to be to ensure that the participants have a good experience.
Absolutely. No, it's really good advice, Anthony. And I think, you know, that planning in everything in life. Great planning leads to success normally. And I think what you've described here, that planning, making sure we've got the right companies, I guess that's even about make sure that they're right for the learning that you want to get, because not every company will be right for every visiting company. And then ensuring that you've got that curation of go look at what we're looking for, and then that debrief and how are we going to actually use it. That's what differentiates it from it being industrial tourism, I guess. You know, and it really becomes meaningful. And one thing that you didn't explicitly talk about, but maybe Rob, you can comment on this, is, you know, we talked about Toyota being the pinnacle, but personally, I've learned more visiting other companies that are maybe not, you know, technically as good as Toyota, but maybe have been closer to achievable or more relevant to what we were trying to do. You know, what's your experience with that, Rob?
Yeah, we saw some several years back. We went to Stuttgart with John, and we saw a few companies, Arberg, Bosch, Trumpf, and what I would say is, you know, we'll talk about this probably a little bit later as well when we advise the listeners on what they can do differently, is don't be blinded by going to see something that is physically brand new, shiny. It's hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds worth of technology. Don't be blinded by that, because potentially that's been bought through capital and it's just there. Whereas maybe if you go to a company that's been around for the last 50, 60 years and they're using machinery that's 30, 40, 50 years old, but they're still gaining a huge performance out of that, the journey they've gone from. So a Kaikaku experience for me is a little bit about seeing. In today's world, we can see I can go onto the internet right now and I could see lots of different companies. I can go on the TV and I can explore factories on the TV. It doesn't feel the same. You need to go to a factory, talk to the employees, talk to the leaders. How does it feel? What was your journey like? How long did it take? You know, what challenges did you have? Now, something about going on a transformation is, even if you're, sometimes when you can go on a Kaikaku experience when you're halfway through a transformation and you know it's not working, it's stalled, it's taken a long time. Going to a company where they have spent the last 5-10 years going through the same journey, you can get this respect, you can get this affinity or linkage with these people, and you can go, oh, well, they feel the same, or they felt the same, and they've come out the other end. You know, I'm not alone. I thought that I was just not good enough. I just didn't think that I was smart enough, clever enough. So going to these companies and actually seeing a company that has gone through the journey or is going through the journey, and then talking to them, listening to their journey, is the most powerful part of a Kaikaku experience for me. And it doesn't need to come from something that is all bright and shiny. How are they doing it with old equipment? How are they doing it with different cultures, different demographics? How are they experiencing that?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. It's really you paint a beautiful picture there, I think, of, you know, what you can learn from companies by opening your eyes and going beyond the veneer. We were actually visited Milliken, one of the plants in Lancashire last week. 158 years old, I think, the structure, the building. It was in a very, you know, less than salubrious area. You know, it was one of the old cotton mills of Lancashire from the years gone by. But the way that they've done 5S really worked. Now, if you went in expecting to see it really shiny, beautiful, you know, new, you wouldn't see that. But that's for people who misunderstand 5S as being about things being shiny and new, as opposed to being a very well organized workplace where people feel safe and can do the job really well. And that's what we saw in Milliken. And, you know, just the way that they've implemented lean in very old building, very old equipment, long history, was phenomenal to see. So that really resonates, Rob, what you were just saying. And Gary, from your perspective, how do you see this? What's a successful Kaikaku experience from your perspective?
So I think for me, and I think I was gonna bring up Milliken, and I think it's just about getting the best out of what you've currently got, and the environment that you're currently in. I think to make a successful Kaikaku experience, you've really got to not focus on the negatives and really look for the positives. And I think it's so easy to go into these companies thinking, okay, well, if you're that good, I'm really going to go in and try and find faults and find all the bad things that you do and go, well, that's not really very good. Yeah. But actually, it's about embracing what they've done, how they do it. And Milliken's a perfect example. Is everybody knew what they should do, how they should do it, what the process was, what the checkpoints were, what the flag systems was, what the visual management meant, when they put in, a material ordering system and a material moving system. Everybody bought into it and worked with it. So for me, it's about, making the most of it. Is if I was to go into a Kaikaku experience from blind, I would be thinking to myself, what problems do I currently have, and how are these trying to resolve and deal with those issues? And Anthony made great points earlier when he said about breaking it into 4 areas, because you can't eat an elephant in one sitting. You've got to break it into more manageable chunks. So for me, I would go in and say, right, I have this particular issue around something, and what I want to learn from is how do they deal with that within this company that I'm visiting, and we can learn so much from them. And Rob, you're absolutely right. Is I currently don't know how to do this. I've tried and I've failed. So how does somebody else do it? And what's going to be my takeaway from then? And I might not take everything, but I'm going to take little bits of it and go, right, okay, that's what I can apply. And again, just following on from John's point, it's about how then do I put that into a plan on how I'm going to do that. The key thing for me as well, it's about radical change. But radical change doesn't come overnight, and it might take 3, 6, 12 months. But as long as you plan and implement and do it, that's absolutely fine. But it's, again, as I said earlier on, it's about really looking at creating those opportunities and just get away from solving problems every day. So what opportunities can I create from visiting, and how then can I implement and apply into my environment that I currently work?
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems it's critical that people have an open mind to learn and not to critique.
Yeah.
Right. So we're at that section of the podcast where we talk about a fun fact. So I said before we started, I said I'm not going to put Anthony on the spot again, but very, very interested in John's fun facts about himself. So, John, what can you tell us that maybe the listeners wouldn't necessarily know about you?
Well, a few things. First of all, both me and you, Philip, attended the same polytechnic at the time, because we're that old, which is now Manchester Metropolitan University. And when I was there, it was just the start of the Premiership. So, fun fact, I actually don't mind the Manchester City Football Club, even though I'm a Manchester United football fan, because I worked at both clubs. So when I was a student at university, I worked at Manchester United Football Club as a programme seller, and also at Manchester City Football Club as a steward for 3 years at both. So every single weekend, I watched for free Premier League football at a time with Jürgen Klinsmann and people like that. So it was a great time to be at university. I watched football every weekend and got paid for it. But being from Manchester, a Manchester United fan, I actually don't mind Manchester City. It's one of those bizarre things. However, I am going to the cup final tomorrow, and I definitely will be supporting City.
Brilliant. That's good job. And actually, I went to Manchester Polytechnic and then graduated from Manchester Met University. So
me too. Yeah.
And what's interesting for me, what's really interesting in that story is that you're a Manchester United fan from Manchester. Wow.
Don't go there, Philip. Our friendship is
great. What's funny though, I used to, because as you know, I'm a Bolton Wanderers fan. But whenever Bolton weren't playing on a Saturday, it was still in the days where you could pay on the gate to get in. So depending whether it was City or United at home, I would actually go with my friends and we would just go and pay on the gate. So I've spent many times watching both of the Manchester clubs. Right, thanks, John. Gary, what about yourself? What can you share with us?
I'm going to stick on the football theme. So I'm a Birmingham City fan for my sins, and I wouldn't say that I could tolerate my local rivals in Aston Villa in any means or any way. You know, I take great joy in their suffering, but equally I don't take any joy in their success, and they are pulling away from us in terms of success. But as a young lad, I used to go up as often as I could, and obviously money was incredibly tight. So there was always a corner of Birmingham City's football ground in the old stadium where you could clamber over the walls and drop into the men's toilets. Yeah, so that was always, and then they kind of stopped that, and then we'd literally wait until about 20 minutes before the end of the game. Then they'd open the gates, and you could actually go in and watch the last 20 minutes. So that was kind of what I always used to do. Which is always a bit of fun. And just one other little point as well. I actually got trapped in a lift one time with changing the subject from football to showbiz now with Lionel Blair, really showing my age now. If anybody you remember who Lionel Blair is, not a very tolerant man. That's what I would say about him. Yeah, he was not a happy bunny. So.
Right. Yeah, I heard that. Sorry, excuse me. I heard that Birmingham City had a plan to increase the revenue by charging to get out.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, all right.
And you're obviously an anti-monarchist as well, because our Prince of Wales and future King is a Aston Villa fan. So
he is, yeah, and that's probably the only thing that I don't like about him. I'm not. The funny thing is, I used to be quite anti-monarchist, but as the years have gone on and the generation have changed, I'm actually really do like them. Apart from one who went to America.
All right, we need to move on now, Gary. This is getting far too political.
Yeah.
Anyway, come the revolution, brother, and all that. Anyway, Rob, about yourself? Let's get the final one from you.
Yeah, let's get away from that subject as well. So mine, I'll get away from football and go on to my passion, which is racing. And last weekend, I went to Santa Pot to watch the European Championships, or the European qualifying for the top fuelers. It was just an incredible experience, incredible day. And all I could think about, most of the time, because most of the engines were blowing up as they were going down the track, all I could think about was Anthony, because there was the fastest tractor cleaning up on the planet. And all I was thinking about is, if he was sat here, does he think his tractor would beat that, or would he go, right, I'm going to get a tractor and I want to beat that tractor? So all I could think about you over the weekend, Anthony, was you and your tractor. Would it beat the tractor on the track?
Okay, so we said we weren't going to put Anthony in the fun facts, and he ended up in it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Great. Thanks very much, everyone. It's always nice. So we learned a lot there, and we learned about, in particular, John's Kaikaku experience to Main Road when he was young. Anyway, so let's move back to the subject now. So we've talked a bit about, isn't this just a benchmarking trip? But I think we've mostly answered that. But let's just do a quick round and really just confirm why this isn't just about benchmarking. So, start with you, Anthony. Why isn't this just benchmarking? Sorry, Anthony, you've still muted yourself.
Yeah, sorry. One of the reasons that it's differentiated from benchmarking for me is, I guess, the afternoon sessions. So really reinforcing the learning. What did we really take from this? What did we learn? What did we see? what were the leaders and the people of the organisation actually telling us? What was their advice? And I don't think that you always get that from a single benchmarking trip or indeed industrial tourism.
Yeah, absolutely. And just changing the question a little bit for you, Gary. Does it need to be large scale? I mean, we've talked about going to companies. We've talked about companies around the world, around Europe. Can you do this? For those companies and those people who, for example, time or money might be restrictive. Can you do this on a budget? I guess is the question, Gary.
Yeah, absolutely you can. I think we all consider world-class companies to be huge companies, multi-billion, multi-site. There are many companies, particularly I've visited quite a few companies that have, a £20 million turnover example that you would probably consider to be, a knocking shop, just, one shop with a number of machines. But actually, it's more about their application and what they believe and what they feel and what they do, as opposed to, a company that's just driven in terms of shareholders. It has to create value. It has to create cash. Some companies that actually do this to survive, and they realise that it's the only method that they can survive as a business is to do the right things at the right time, make the product once, get the right flow through, get them actually the product in and out the door as fast as they can, get the best engagement of the people that they possibly can, create the safest work environment that they can. And it might not, Philip, it might not even be called an operating model that they work to. It's just the application of a number of the tools that they require to survive as a business. So my answer is no, it doesn't. Does it have to have an operating model? No, I don't think it does. But what it does need to do, and what we need to take from it, is the demonstration that if we do the right things and we believe in the right things, the results will be a natural occurrence from that and a natural consequence. So no, it doesn't have to be multi-billion, multi-site. It could be single company, single site, doing the right things at the right time.
Yeah, so it's about finding somebody who can inspire and you can learn from, and it can have
absolutely. Yeah.
And I guess it can be multi-industry, and it probably even can help when you go to industries that aren't your own as well, John. So, maybe you want to share with the listeners some of the industries you deal with, because I think you've covered a plethora of industries, haven't you?
Yeah. So it's one of the things about when you're looking to go benchmarking, you've got two things. You can either do it yourself or get a company to do it for you. It's about resources and time and the network. When it comes to visiting companies that you organise yourself, you generally go outside of what your industry is because they won't let you in. Because if you're making planes, you're not going to get an airplane manufacturer doing it. So regarding benchmarking, different types of companies, it's so good to see a company that does something totally different from you. Okay, whether it's making things or servicing things. I've been to service companies who've got great daily management systems in place that you wouldn't expect them to have daily management systems in place, that have great use of apps and digital tools because they're service sector. So there's nothing wrong. And in fact, I definitely recommend that people get involved in visiting places that have got nothing to do with what they do, because they really see a different way of doing things, and they go outside that kind of view of what life's like and what the world is like. So any organisation that's actually world class in what they do, regardless of sector, supermarkets, hotels, you can get really good ideas from them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've even got a company in the wine industry, haven't you, that you sometimes work with, John?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a bottling plant, but yeah, it's, as I said, it doesn't matter what organisation you are, even in the public sector as well, which sounds a bit strange for me, but occasionally in totally different sectors, you can get really good inspiration from what can be done, and definitely recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rob, if we think about that, what are some of the do's and don'ts of a Kaikaku experience?
So definitely, assuring the right people that are in the team. So John talked about this. Having a well rounded team. You can't go on a Kaikaku experience with just the senior leaders, for example, because the whole purpose of the experience is to see, feel, and hear, and to Anthony's words, smell what great looks like, and to experience that. So the one key is to create that team, create that plan, understand what your vision looks like. In terms of don't be disrespectful. Going back to what Gary was saying, and John was very keen on this, very clear on this when we were going into Stuttgart, was you may see things you don't agree with. You may see things you don't get. Don't go in there and be disrespectful. These sites that are opening their doors, we should be privileged that they've opened the doors for us. Yes, we're paying. Yeah, you may have to pay for the experience, but why not? Right? They've gone through a hard grafted journey to get to where they are. Now they're proud. They're proud of what they've got, and they are so proud they're willing to show everybody. So don't go in there and be disrespectful. Don't be late. Don't be talking. Don't be going in there and sort of ripping up what they've got, because that's what they've worked on and crafted over the years. So do make sure you plan, make sure that you thoroughly enjoy the experience, go open-minded in terms of don't go in there, and if you see things you don't like or disagree with, don't be very open and vocal with it. As Anthony put, afterwards, in the after workshop that you're going to do, talk about that yourselves and say, well, what can you learn from even the negatives that you saw? What can you learn from yourself?
Excellent. Thanks very much there, Rob. Okay, so as we're coming to the end of this episode, I'd like to close with getting each of you to give your advice to anyone who wants to attend or arrange a Kaikaku experience. So let's just take 1 minute each maximum to give that advice. So Gary, can I start with you, please?
Yes, yeah. So my advice would be is take with you what you're struggling with and what concerns that you currently have. Utilize the Kaikaku experience to really understand, that particular area of the walkthrough or the talk through. Talk to as many people as you can about their journey and how they dealt with it, and then just take the real good stuff that you think you can apply. And don't worry if you see stuff that actually you think is too far ahead for you. It's not about applying everything. It's about applying what you truly need and believe will benefit. And again, and as Rob said, and I said before, don't go in there with the mindset that I'm going to find faults, because if you're that good, I'm going to find the faults that don't make you that good. So going with one or two things you really want to learn, and really dig into the experience and the knowledge that these companies do have, because you will pick up something, even if it's only one thing. It's about that step change, and coming out with one, it's better than coming out with none.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that, mate. Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, I can't really go much onto what Gary said. So yeah, I think one of the things is don't be a passenger. You've got a great opportunity. If you're going to commit to going somewhere, don't just go there and just look around. Get engaged, ask questions, but more questions of how and why did they make those changes? Why are they using those tools? And how did you get there? How long did it take? They're the questions that will really, or the answers that you'll get from them will really help shape how you can transform your business. It's not about, we all know what the tools are and you can look online and find all the tools. It's how are they being used? Why did you decide to use that tool? So my advice is go in there and seek the why and seek the how. Don't necessarily focus purely on the what.
That's great advice. I really like that, Rob. Thank you. And then Anthony.
Yeah, I think the thing that hasn't been said so far for me is really about carefully shortlisting companies that you could go and visit, And then, as I mentioned earlier, do the pre-visit. If you've got the wrong companies in your Kaikaku experience, it'll make or break the experience. So you really got to make sure they are the right companies in the right industries that are excelling in the things that you want to transmit. And if you're using the Kaikaku experience, as John said, as a way to sell the idea of going on a lean journey, then they've really got to be the right companies. So make sure that you do that. And I guess the don't from my side is you're there to see what you can learn. You're not there to compare yourself. So if you're going in there, or if you're facilitating this and a team's going in and they're trying to pull fault with things and say that, well, yeah, our 5S is better, or the way that we do visual management is better, you're not going to get what you need out of the experience. So it's really, really important up front that people understand how to behave when they're going on the Kaikaku experience and what they're actually looking for.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant advice there, Anthony, by somebody who's done this on a number of occasions. And then last but not least, I wanted to save the last word to our guest, John. So, John, what's your advice?
Yeah, so top level, if you're thinking of doing a Kaikaku, start with why and the end in mind. Very, very simple. I think why you're doing it. Second one is choose very carefully a world-class organisation, because if it's not world-class, then it becomes a benchmarking visit. As a benchmarking visit, you can visit companies that are as good as you in areas where it's problem solving, making work visual, whatever it is. So visiting a company that does things as good as you, or maybe about the same, it's a benchmarking visit, because you're just benchmarking where you are. If you're looking for that inspiration, that radical change, it needs to be world class, that way ahead of where you actually where you are and where you want to be. So it's a selection is as important as anything else. And then the third one is, if you haven't already got an established network for your own colleagues, go visit an expert. Go see an expert who can actually help craft one for you, which is what GKN's done in the past, whether it's in North America or Asia or Europe. Yeah, so go and see an expert if you've got any reservations about organising it yourself.
Right, absolutely good advice, John. And you're definitely not on here to promote yourself, but we can certainly vouch for the service that you've provided. So thank you for that. So thank you very much, all of my guests, Gary, Rob, Anthony, and very much John. I know you're just about to go into a client, so I appreciate you making the time. And to the listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed this. And remember, it's about changing how you lead, not who you are.